Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tobias Fenster and David Feldhoff.
Welcome to our session, Being More Efficient with Visual Studio Code. You can probably imagine, because for most of you it also will be similar, how much fun it is to be at an in-person event again. So really gracious for, or thankful for all of you turning up and being able to talk to a real audience, not just into a camera or watching a screen. So thanks a lot for all of you for coming. As I said, our topic for today is being more efficient with VS Code. So we will share with you a couple of tricks, a couple of hints, show you a couple of demos, how you can maybe work faster, work easier with our beloved development environment, Visual Studio Code. But first of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Tobias Fenster. I'm one of the managing partners of 4PS in Germany. I'm also a Microsoft Regional Director and MVP for Azure and for Business Central. And if you want to follow along what I'm doing, you can find my Twitter handle, my LinkedIn handle, and also the URL for my blog. And I'm extremely happy that David has agreed to talk together with me, so I let him introduce himself.
Yeah, hello. My name is David Feldhoff. I'm developer, and I don't have all these titles, but I still like to be in touch with the community, for example, by creating the VS Code extension AL Code Actions. And you can also find me on Twitter or LinkedIn, whatever you like.
Great. So the agenda for today. What we will talk about is a couple of things, as I said, that allow you to work faster, to work easier, to work more efficient in Visual Studio Code. And the topics that we will cover are snippets, configurations, regular expressions, a couple of recommended extensions and their usage, and in the end, we will show you how you can build your own Visual Studio Code extension if all of this is not enough and you just need something else, something different. But with that, I want to hand it over to David again for the first section about snippets.
Exactly. So I want to start with snippets and want to show you what snippets are, how to use them, and how we can create our own. And I would describe snippets as code templates with some specific placeholders. So we can insert a bunch of code and directly tab through it and enter our variables just the way we would like it. And there are already quite a bunch of snippets for whole objects like code units or for smaller parts like page fields or report data items whatsoever. But we are in the tech days and I would like to directly jump into the demo and show you what snippets are. So you are seeing my VS Code. And now if I start typing for example, T report, I get a few snippets suggested, and then I can see what the snippets would insert and decide what I want to use. And then I can select a snippet and jump through the specific placeholders in the text here and go on. And I think snippets are a good way on the one hand to, of course, don't waste time on writing codes that can be pre-populated. But also if you are inserting reports that or objects that you're not maybe that familiar with, maybe you missed, for example, that there's a rendering section that we can work with and something like that. But the snippets suggestion is quite noisy because there are already quite much snippets. And we can clear that up a little bit and keep it clean. And for that, we are using the command insert snippet that shows all our snippets that we do have from all extensions and so on. And you see that the scroll bar is quite big. So I'm searching here for T report, and I get the same suggestions like in IntelliSense. And here I could say, for example, I don't want to have the snippets from Waldo, so let's hide them. And the report layout, I also don't use that, so just hide a few of them. And now, if you are using IntelliSense again, it's much cleaner and so it's better. The next one I want to do is I want to create a test code unit now. And the first thing I want to do is that I want to insert an ID. And what you see as well, that the snippets yeah, they are at the top, and of course I want to hit the ID and just want to hit space enter and have the ID with me. So I think there's a setting for us AL developers that we can or should have always activated, and we can find that in the snippet suggestion. And here it is. The default one is inline. We could also say that we do not want to have snippets at all, but we can also say that we want to have them at the bottom. That's the one that I prefer. And now hitting again the IntelliSense, the snippets are at the bottom, and our IDs that we want to insert now are at the top, and we simply can add enter and go ahead. But now let's say the snippet it's already good, but we are doing it differently in our company. So we want to adjust it a little bit, just so that it suits our needs. For example, I'm clearing the description. I don't need the initial, so on one trigger, we are not working that much with the variable storage and so on, so I can remove here a little bit, just to have it more clean. Whoop. Maybe I also use the library assert. That's more up to date. Yeah, and so on and so forth. So you get it. And now I can simply select everything. And with an extension I have installed, which is called the Snippet Creator, that helps me to create snippets directly on the fly. So let's do that. And I open the command bar and say create snippet. So that's a command coming from that extension. And then it asks me a few questions for which language it is. Honestly, yeah, obviously for AL. Then I have to give that a snippet name, which I enter. And now it wants to have a prefix. That's the one that we are seeing in IntelliSense. So I will use t_testcode_unit and give that some description. Okay, and that's already it. And now at the bottom right corner, we see that the test code unit was added to the AL JSON, and that we should edit it using the command configure user snippets. That's what I'm going to do now. I go to the configure user snippets. There it is. And here I can find my AL JSON where the test code unit snippet was inserted. And let me just quickly remove this one. Okay, so this is our test code unit that we just created. So we see here the name, we see the prefix, the content of that, and the description. And now we have to adjust it a little bit to have these placeholders and so on, because we, of course, don't want to insert all the time the code unit 50,106. And for that, I'm jumping to the documentation from of VS Code. And there we see that we can insert tab stops with $1, $2, and so on. And the last one is always $0, where we can end the snippet mode with. And we can also insert placeholders by using curly brackets and then the placeholder followed by a colon. Or we could even use choices or variables whatsoever. So I will do that. And I want to have the ID. Let's use here the placeholder. And now we do have, let me close this one. Now the code unit name should be changed in multiple places. And there I want to make an excursion for the multi-cursor functionality from VS Code, where we simply can click with Ctrl-D, we can select or add multiple cursors at the next find match position. So I have now 4 cursors in place and have just to enter 1 times the $2, and I can leave that with escape. Furthermore, I don't want to get rid of all these 4 spaces. There's another multi-cursor functionality which I can use, which is Ctrl-Shift-L, that simply matches all matches of that find set. So I don't have to go through them one by one. And now I simply click once /T, and that's it. Furthermore, I forgot one thing, that we want to edit something like /T, feature, and then we do have some feature description here. And then we want to start creating our procedure. So that's it. That should be it for our snippet. Let's try it out. I don't need the one from NAB anymore, so I can again go to my snippet and hide this one, so that my IntelliSense is again clean and I only see the ones that I want to insert. But even if it's hidden from IntelliSense, I could also use it using this way that it is inserted, so that would still be possible. But now, test code unit, I only have mine left. I am entering an ID, my test code unit, entering a feature, posting sales orders, and now I can directly start and create my test procedures. Okay, so for now I will stop here and go back to the presentation. And yeah, here for you to read or to look up the link to the documentation of VS Code for the snippets. And what we did was we used the snippet creator, used the configure user snippets command afterwards to modify it. Yeah, we used the $1, $2 to add placeholders. We saw that we can use placeholders for these tab stops. We could also use variables like the clipboard. Can add choices so that we get a drop down with some specific values. And there's also a possibility to transform the text that we are entering. We will come to that later, but for now, just as an info that there's more to come. Okay, furthermore, I showed this one just on the fly. That was the add selection to next find match with a Control D, or the select all occurrences of find match with a Control Shift L. And there are further possibilities, but I won't show them at all. You can read it up. Okay, I think that was it. That was my first part. I will hand up over to you.
Thanks. So next topic is configurations. David has now shown you how you can create code basically faster, change code faster, and we will now look into how we can navigate that code that we've created faster. The first one that I want to show you is that we can use fast scrolling. So you can see here, this is just a regular page. And if I scroll using my mouse wheel, you can see that I have to do a lot of scrolling to get down here. If this is a large file, it could be easier to just hold down the Alt key, and now I'm scrolling only once, and this brings me right to the bottom or to the top in this case. Now this is just a quick and easy way if you know that you have to cover a lot of ground using your mouse wheel, that will make you faster. Another thing that you can use, oh yeah, and that was already in the demo. Another thing that you can use to navigate in your files and even in between files is the go to symbol in file, Control-Shift-O, and also the breadcrumbs, which you can activate with Control-Shift and the dot. So how does this look like? If I'm in here, I can hit Control-Shift and O, and there you can see that I now have all the symbols that are in my file. So I can just go down here, or I can start writing and find the right place. So this helps me to quickly jump into the right position that I want to go to. The other thing that I can use is Control, Shift, and plus. And this, as you can see, activates the breadcrumb feature on top of Visual Studio Code here. So I can now hit the right arrow. You can see here that this now gives me a tree. So compared to the thing that we saw below, it's not just a list in which you can search, but instead this is a structured tree that you can also use to navigate into the right places. So now if I go down here, you can see that I have moved down in like line 50. And it's also worth noting that if I hit escape, I'm still back into the cursor position. So that way I'm not directly jumping there, I can just kind of preview and then I hit escape and I get back quickly into the position that I was before. The other thing that I want to point out here is that by hitting the left arrow, I can also change between files. I can even change between folders and so on. So this can also be a very quick and easy way if you don't want to, open a different file, move your mouse over. I personally am a heavy keyboard user, so it's nice to have that way to navigate in your files very quickly and then open them and again, navigate to the right symbol that you want. And the last one, probably a very easy one, but still very helpful, is Control-G, which allows you to go into a line. So if you get an error message and it tells you that it happened in line 50, then you have a very easy way to move here. Also, to keep you oriented, I want to point out above here, this is a configuration setting called sticky mode, which allows you to keep basically the breadcrumb as well available here. So if I'm scrolling down here, it changes, as you can see. But then for longer procedures or the layout section like here, I can still keep track of where I currently am at. Now you might say, dude, that's shortcuts, that's not configurations. And of course you're right. But the thing here is, and that's the reason why we put it in here, that those settings or those shortcuts actually are also configurable. So there's a default list, but you can also add your own shortcuts or change them. So if I open up the list of keyboard shortcuts, I get the full list here, as you can see. I can also search for them, for example, reload window. Then I can see, okay, that's the one that I wanted to have. But I can also hit the shortcut, if I don't mistype, plus here. And control is spelled like this, yay. So now I have the control B shortcut, so if you only know the shortcut but not the name, you can also search for that. And then of course you can change it. So I want to have this as a shortcut, that works. I can also do things like, change it again. Things like Control C, then it tells me that 18 existing commands have this key binding, so I'm also notified if any changes are happening. And then you can also see, if we go back to the full list, that there are commands that don't have a shortcut or might have been deleted, can't find one here. So then I can also add my own shortcut if I want to define one for a specific action. And what's also interesting, if we take a look at that, is that those configurations can be synchronized across machines. So if you have maybe different environments, you have different, I don't know, VMs, laptops, you get a new laptop, whatever, you don't need to manually set all that up, but instead those configurations can be synchronized. And it even recently got a feature that's called profiles. So you can have a profile for AL development, a profile for PowerShell, a profile for C# with different settings, different extensions, different configurations, which also helps to unclutter and make sure that you're really working in an optimized environment. And just to quickly show you, if I go into the settings here, I can say turn on settings sync, and then I can select the things that I want to have synchronized, settings, keyboard shortcuts, user snippets, and so on. I can select them, log in using, I think, a GitHub authentication or a Microsoft account, and then I have them synchronized, and if I move to a different machine, I can synchronize again, and I'm up and running again. Same for the profiles that you can see here. I have a default one and a BC TechDays 2020. I can create, rename, export, import, the things that you would imagine, but the main thing is that it helps you to have different setups, different configurations, extensions, etc. for the different environments you might work in. Another thing that helps with working faster are a couple of configurations. And we could basically have talked about the different configuration settings for, I don't know, 45 minutes, 60 minutes. So we only selected a couple few. Very recently also added is the new merge editor. To show you how that looks like, you can enable it by searching for git merge. And then if I select this, then it will use the merge editor. For example, here I have a conflict. Now I can say open in merge editor, and now I get a nice little overview. I can see the different changes. Let's say I want to accept that one. I can see that this has actually been automatically been merged, but I can also undo the merge. And then let's select that one. And now I can see 0 conflicts remaining, accept the merge, and then I have done my merge. I know there are really great merge tools out there, but maybe for a couple of easy merges or for those people who haven't used a specific 3-way merge editor before, this could also be a nice alternative. And as you've seen, the default is still the inline view. Okay, now I don't see it because I've solved the conflicts, but the default is still the inline view, and then you can open the new merge editor if you want. Another thing is the format on save mode. I guess that most of you are familiar with the format on save, which just triggers the auto format when you save a file. But then you might run into a situation where your format settings are maybe different, or you have an old code base that is not completely formatted. So if you make the change and then you save, it will format the whole file for you. Unfortunately, there are settings here as well. So if we go in here, search for format on save, then we have the format on save mode, and that explains very well what it does. The default is to just format the full file. You can have only the modification, but that requires source control. So if you have source control, it will identify the changes based on the source control, and then only format the modifications, the changes that you make. And the other option is modifications if available, which means if you have source control, it only formats the modifications. If you don't have source control, then it formats the full file. Then we have the simple file dialog. As I said before, I personally am a heavy keyboard user. So when I do something like Control O to open a file, it's nice to have this simple file browser here, where I can just use the keyboard to go into directories, to move back out, to start typing, and then it moves around. So for me, that's a lot faster, but also that's a setting called the simple dialog, which is by default disabled. Then you get the standard operating system file dialog, but you can also enable this simple dialog. Okay, that's it what I wanted to show you for configurations. Now we go into the regular expression session. And just to briefly share with you the history of this session, David had entered into a different conference, a session about regular expressions, and I voted for it because I really wanted to hear it. But unfortunately, it didn't get enough votes. So I asked him if he wanted to join the session or if he should try to get a session in TechDays. Unfortunately, he has agreed. So this is not a content that we would have otherwise missed out, and I'm very happy that David will show you what it was.
Yeah, thank you, Tobias. Yeah, I cannot hear you cheering yet, but maybe we can change that. I want to show you what regular expressions are and how we can use them. And yeah, I would describe, or what can we do with regular expressions is that we can search a specific pattern in a text. And this pattern that we are searching for is described by the regular expression. And besides simply searching for it, we are also able to making more powerful regex replays or search replay scenarios. And yeah, that's what we can do with it. And yeah, I know that there are reasons that there are images like this in the internet, and I can understand that. I mean, this at the bottom, yeah, this one. It's a totally valid regular expressions, and if you have no clue about regular expressions, what they are, that might scare you, and I could understand that. But I think we don't have to be so scared. So there are only a few things that we have to learn, because they are simply special characters, and these special characters define groups, character classes, quantifiers, or something like that. And I want to go through that with you with an example that should be familiar with you. So I want to find all table definitions, so all tables with ID and and with that name. So I will switch over to the base app, and now I want to go with you. Yeah, you see it? I simply search for table, and then here is a flag or an option that we can set, which is called use regular expressions. I will do that, and you see it still works. So that's also a valid regular expression, because until now we are not using some special characters. The first special character that I want to introduce is a dot, which is a wildcard. So with that we are searching for, so we are matching the table 1 of customer, but we are also matching the equal sign or the n of table name. And that's obviously not the thing that we want to do. So we only want to allow digits as next character. And that's where character classes come into play. So with that, we define them with using square brackets. And then in these square brackets, we can define which characters are valid as next character. So we could say ABC, then only ABC is valid. We could also define ranges like A to Z uppercase, A to Z lowercase, or 0 to 9. But we could also make a blacklist that we say all characters are allowed, but not uppercase A to Z. So that's what we are doing if we entering the caret at the beginning of the character class. So obviously what we are going to do is we are entering 0 to 9, and now we don't want to have that. Now we are finding all tables and the first digit of that. So that looks much better. There's one more thing I want to say about character classes. If they are recurring ones, like a digit, for example, there we have synonyms for that. So I could have also used the \d in this case, because it says as well that it is the 0 to 9. But there are other familiar or other shortcuts, for example, the \w, which stands for any word character, or the \s that stands for any whitespace character. So yeah, there are a few shortcuts for character classes which look like these. Okay, so we are still matching the same. Now we want to find out, or now we know that table IDs have more, so they are longer than 1 digit. So we need somehow to say that there are multiple of them, and that's what quantifiers are for. So we could add a question mark that would say, or would mean that the digit would only be there 0 times or 1 time. And obviously the one that we are using, or that we need for now, is a plus sign. So I already will add it here. But I could also use a specific amount if I enter these in the curly brackets. That would also be a possibility, but not needed for now for us. And what we could also do now is we could use the \w, so any word space character, 1 or multiple times, to find, for example, or to match. I think I'm missing a space here. Yeah, I am. So now I'm matching table 18 customer already. So that looks good for now, but I'm also matching this one, the obsolete reason, or some text inside here. That's not what we want to do. We only want the table definitions, and they start always at the beginning of the line. And that's why I'm introducing now the anchors. So if we put the caret at the beginning of a regular expression, that means that the line has to start with that one. So I'm putting it here at the top, at the beginning of the regular expression, and the other occurrences are gone. So I think we are coming closer. But now you might say, okay, David, but there are other table names. For example, the sales line, or country/region, or cust.ledger entry, or ship -2 address. You know what I mean. So so what we tend to do then is that we are making a whitelist approach and try to do something like this: quote followed by a word space, a word character, or by a space, or by a minus, so something like that. I wouldn't do that because I don't know, maybe there are other table names that I don't have in my mind yet. So better would be in this case to use a blacklist approach, simply to say we have the ID, followed by a quote, followed by 1 or more characters which are not a quote. So we remember that we can negate the character class. And if we are doing that, I would simply paste it in here. There it is. Now we are matching the other tables, account.scheduled and so on. So that looks also good. But now we do have, we are either matching the customer table, so without quotes, or the ones with quotes, and that's where the or come. I will turn off the screencast mode. What I can do is with the or, so with a pipe, I can combine these two regular expressions. So I can simply put a pipe between them, and then I'm matching everything. But there's even a better way, and that is the last one, I promise. If we that we can use groups. And these are the things that we can do with normal parentheses. So our first option is the one with just word characters. The other option is the ones with quotes followed by one or multiple characters without a quote followed by a quote. And so we can combine them in a group. So we made a group around it, and inside that we put the pipe. And now we are matching all tables. And there's one more thing with the groups that's nice with them. They capture the text inside that. And what I mean with that is what I want to show you in the replay scenario. Just for the fun, I will do a parentheses or a group also around the ID. And then I've prepared some text here, which I'll place inside this one. And you can see, wrong window. So something like this. So what you can see is that in the first group, which we can refer with $1, there's just the ID inside. In the second group, we have the name, and in the group 0, there's a whole match, so everything. And we just can refer to them by adding in the replace text the dollar integer. So with that, you can replace some text and refer to a part of the matching text, and that can also come in handy. Okay. And what you can maybe do with it, for example, is, it was basically shown in the keynote today, but I want to show it nevertheless. We can open the editor, or the search editor in VS Code with all the matches, and there I can say as well, select all matches, which I do have here. And then we are having again the multi-cursor functionality, and I can copy all these occurrences, and then I can, for example, go here, enter permission set, tab through it, and then I could paste it in everywhere. And then I say here, I want in the BC TechDays.al, I want to do a replacement. I will move the caret here at the beginning because that one is not really at the beginning. And then I can say I want to replace it with the table data. $1 equals, full permissions. Doesn't make, also, don't want to say that you should do it, but just want to show the possibilities that we do have. Oh, $1 was the ID, but you get what I mean. Of course, I should have entered the $2. So there are quite some nice possibilities with Regex and Visual Studio Code. What can we use it also? Where it also comes in handy is, for example, if I want to search for libraries, for test libraries. So let's say I want to create a procedure, and there I want to create some sales line or order, header, something like this. Don't know how Microsoft calls them. And the wildcard here is not the best one. I should have better say that I allow everything except an opening parentheses, because then I would be in the parameter section, as you can see here somewhere. So I will change that. I think everything except opening parentheses. And now I find multiple libraries from Microsoft that already create something with sales. So create sales line with all possible types, create sales order item tracking, and so on, with the contact, with the discount. So I did not know that all these procedures were there, and so with a regular expression we can search for them, and I think that also can come in handy, just so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel in these cases. Okay, switching back. That was our demo. So we created a permission set and showed with that the Regex replace functionality, and also did the relevant test library procedure. We found them. And that should be it with regular expressions for now. Next topic will be the recommended extensions. And before I start with that, I mean, there are already quite a bunch of extensions, and yeah, that's not all. And that's just from the AL perspective. So, I mean, there are other VS Code extensions that are coming in handy, but yeah, before I want to start, I want to say thank you to all of these contributing, and sorry if I can't show everything in our demos. Our time is limited, right? So I focused on how we can do things faster in our workflow, that we are doing. So first topic is create or extend objects faster. And there we do have the object wizard functionality from the AZAL DevTools, also add multiple fields functionality, or even from AL Object ID Ninja, the assign IDs in multi-user repos. So let me switch to my project here. And let's say I want to create, what's going on? There. I want to create a new wizard. That's a file wizard from the AZAL DevTools. And we can create multiple objects, but I think where it really is a great one is for pages. Because there I can say, I have an object name, my customer list, and I have a customer. It is of type list. Some application area category, just use this. And it should create tooltips. I go on with next. I will sort them by ID so that I have the most relevant things here in place directly. I mark them, move them over to the selected fields, and I click on finish. And what we see here is that the page fields have a tooltip, and it's not just specifies the blah, it has some meaning. And so how does it do it? It checks where the record number is on other pages as well, and takes that, we use this tooltip. But it might be that the tooltip is not really the best one. What I could do then is click on a code action and say, we use tooltip from other pages, same extension, same functionality. But in this case, I get a selection from all pages where it is with all tooltips. And then I can say, yeah, maybe this one is the most descriptive, I will take this one, for example. And yeah, so that's, if you want to reuse tooltips, a nice functionality. Furthermore, if we now want to extend a specific page and we want to add multiple fields there as well, and let's say we want to add them after the number, then I'm placing my cursor here at the number field, using again the code action, and there it says add multiple fields. And it's again the same functionality, and I can select some things here. I could even search for allow line discount, for example. And I see that I have 3 selected, click OK, and they are added after the record .number field. So I think that can save quite much typing and just using the commands that we do have here. Furthermore, I set the Object ID Ninja from Virko is here. This one, unfortunately, it does not work right now. That the wizard is working with the Ninja, but I think that's coming pretty soon. And what we see here, that the AL Object ID Ninja suggests another number, and that might be because Tobias and me are working on the same project, but he already creates in his branch or in his local repository, he already used the pages, the 3 pages. So I should better use the one with the 3 at the end, just so that we don't have any ID conflicts. And yeah, it's as easy as selecting it from the IntelliSense. So also a very nice tool. Okay, clean up your code faster. Same extension, AZAL DevTools has much features for that. So I think I wouldn't get them on the page all, so I just stopped here. But read once through his README and you can see what it's capable of. Just to know a few things, we move with usage, the sort variables, we move unused variables, add parentheses, and so on. And the most of them you can also add on save. So if you are saving the file, that then the variables are sorted and so on, that you don't have to think about that one. We could also disable some warnings if it's fine, for example, that in this case there's a warning. Don't know a case for that, but then I could simply click on the code action and say disable it this time. Then it surrounds it with a pragma, that it says pragma warning disable, this line, and directly after it, it creates another pragma where it restores the warning again. And if we want to have more code cops to comply with, to keep your clone even more, to keep your code even more clean, you can use the lintercop, Business Central lintercop extension. And yeah, with that there are, I think, 10, 15 rules, something about that, to comply with these as well. Then I do have navigate faster. I thought about showing the Object Explorer now, but we all see it in the keynote. That there's something else coming. But for example, the Object Explorer from the AZL DevTools is easily shown as clicking on the app file and then it's here. But there's another possibility which I think is not that well known, which I want to show as well, and that is the AL Object Helper. And there I can simply click Control-Shift-O. While I'm coding here, I simply click Control-Shift-O, and then the page pops up, and I can say I want to go to the sales line, and it directly opens this one for me. So I think that's an easy way to not use a mouse, click on the app file, or even the thing that Microsoft will invent. That's also a nice solution to navigate through the symbols. Okay. Then how can we code faster? I think there we do have a few conversion things. So there's already something in the code and we can convert it. For example, we can convert options on the fly to enums. So we are using them in another place in the code as well. Then we can convert it to an enum and then we are able to use it at other places as well. We can create interfaces based on code units. So that's also nice functionality and saves you quite a lot of typing. You can convert text to labels, you can extract procedures whatsoever. I will show that shortly to you. So the first thing I'm showing is a create interface. I simply go on the code unit and on the top line, I activate the code actions and there I do have an action which is called create interface. It suggests me a name, it simply puts in I for interface at the beginning. And then I do have my interface with all the procedures, parameters, and so on. So yeah, as said, that can save you quite a much of typing. The other things I want to show, I said we can create an option. We have here an option on the table field, and it's a member site that has successful member prefix, and the caption is a caption suffix, sorry. And in between there are some options that are missing, but nevertheless, I can simply say we refactor this one to an enum, I give it a name, and I'm good to go. So it identifies the IDs correctly, the member correctly, the captions correctly, and so on. And then I can go ahead and use this enum at other places in the code. Another thing was the extract procedure. I can simply go in the repeat until loop and say I want to extract this one to another procedure. So that's the code action I'm talking about. Do something in a loop. And what you see here is that it recognizes that the customer was used before and afterwards. And so it has to give that over as a parameter. But the amount, for example, was also a local variable on that do something procedure, but it was only used in the code that we extracted. So it moved it down to make it as local as possible. Furthermore, I could here click on the message and say, this one should be a label now. That is my new label. Now the screencast mode is not that good. Okay, hope that's better. I could create that some variables are global afterwards, and it places them at the right position according to the Microsoft style guide for these things, and so on. We can add parameters and whatever, but I won't go too much into detail due to lack of time. And then, last but not least, we do have the create variables. There are two extensions, basically, that are doing that. And yeah, we can also create procedures on the fly or something like that. And I will show these ones with you together while completing our test procedure snippet. So I will go to that. I think here where was it? Here it was. So we stopped here, and I want to create now a test procedure. So there is already a snippet, but I think that's not, yeah, it does not match our needs directly. So I will clean it up again. Simply remove it, create a new snippet for that. You know it. Create snippet. That's fine. AL test procedure. Now the snippet is a prefix, so that was again the thing that we see in IntelliSense. T test procedure. BC TechDays as description. And now I show you how our test procedures are looking normally. So we do have something like given, and then customer with special setup. And then we do have here a prefix, create, and then nearly exactly the same text as above in the given, just different. So just with a Pascal case. And after that, we want to add procedures, parameters, and want to stop here at the end of the procedure to go directly, hit enter, and yeah. So can we create a snippet for that as well? Let's try this. I will create a new, I will create a new snippet for that. Again, a language. Snippet has a name, which doesn't matter. The prefix is more important. Snippet description doesn't matter as well, for my case. Okay, and now we modify them. Again, in the AL JSON. And I have to scroll down a little bit. This one we can see isn't the best. Here I have to remove these. Now it's fine. And maybe I can also add a tabular here. So now I have to specify the procedure name if I want to create a new test procedure, and then I directly stop at where I want to create my first given statement, right? And now what is more important here is I want to create my given, I want to create a snippet for this one. So obviously here I want to create my description of that given. And now, as said, I want to have here the exact same text, but we want to slightly transform that so that there's a Pascal case afterwards. And then we can go to, we want to use parameters and stop it at the end. Okay, so we said we want to transform it here slightly. Let's go to the Microsoft documentation and see if that's possible. So we see here we have a variable section, and then we do have a variable transform section, which is looking good. But as I had the first look on it, it was quite, it was not that easy for me to understand that. So I want to go with you through it once, so that you understand or that you know how to read that and that you can create it on your own. So here we do have the extended brackets now form, and I want to go with you step by step through it. So we already knew a tab stop can be created by $ followed by an integer, $1, $2, that's the thing that we are doing all the time. But I could also do this one, $int transform. I will copy that to have it here. And then let's look how the transform is explained. We see it here at this part, and I will copy this text as well as we are also using it. or needing it, let's say it that way. And we see that consists of a regular expression. Now, luckily, we know how regular expressions work. And then it is followed by another slash, and then there's either a format or a text. So the text would be a thing where you can replace something with. But in our case, we just want to format it, because here we see the format part. There we can say that it should be in Pascal case formatted. And the last part would be options. This is a regular expression option or a regular expression flag, but we don't need that for now. So I already copied that. Now I need the format part, but I now need only this. So you always see here this OR, and I know now that I only need this part. Because here we specify the integers that we want to, so it should be exactly like the given description, but it should be transformed by Pascal case. Okay, and now let's create our result. So we do have dollar, curly brackets, like this, and then the integer, so we did it. And now the transform part is coming next. And that looks like, I will simply type it here, format options, just because I always forget to how it looks like then. And the format should be now, before that, the regex is a thing that we want to match the $1 thing from, and we want to match everything. So I simply put a wildcard, the wildcard is a dot sign, and then I add the plus so that it matches the whole given description that I entered there. And now this one I want to transform to Pascal using Pascal case. So let's see how we can do that. It says I should enter a dollar sign followed by a curly bracket, followed by an integer. And this integer is now the group of the regular expression. And we remember that in the regex group 0, there's always the full match. So I'm entering the 0 in this case, then a colon is followed, and after that I should either use upcase or downcase or capitalize or whatever. Of course, we want to use the Pascal case. So I paste it in here, and then followed by a curly bracket. Okay, then the slash followed, and then the options followed. As I said, we don't need them. So let's throw them away. So this is our result. Luckily, you just have to do that once. So we don't have to look at that ever again. And I will paste it in here. But now let's see what we can do with it. I will remove my comments here. And maybe I will also copy the text. I can do that with, there's a functionality for that you select something, and then by using Control, Shift, and up arrow or down arrow, you are creating you're duplicating the lines that you just selected. That's what I just did. And now I'm creating here the when scope, the when part, and here's the then part. Then the then should be prefixed with verify. And the when part should not have a prefix. That's how we defined it in our company. Okay, so now let's try and see what we can do. So I want to create a test procedure. First of all, I'm using my snippet from the BC TechDays. That's, by the way, is a description, and that is the name of the procedure. I did not go into that yet because I think it's not important. First, procedure. Next tab directly places me to the position where I can start creating my given when thens. That's what I'm doing now. I say tGiven, customer with special setup. You see, until now, it's really the exact same text. But if I click now on tab, the transform will kick in, and it makes that to the Pascal case. And now I can enter my parameter, tab once again, I'm at the end of my statement, and I can create my next given sales order of that customer. I will hand over the sales header and the customer, and we'll go ahead. T when, post sales order. Hit tab, transform kicks in, and I will do that. And now I will say afterwards there's a sales invoice header that I get returned. And then I'm using the next one, the T-then, and say verify, sales header is posted, and don't know what I should, let's say I put into that the sales invoice header. Okay, so I have the skeleton for that, but it's everything is wet. Not that good, but we can manage it. So now I go through it and say this one should be a variable. I use a code action for that, and that says add local variable customer. Because that name directly matches with the table name, it directly adds it without further questions. Then I go to the sales header. Same thing here. I add it, and the record is added. Furthermore, I will go down to the sales invoice header. Same play. Control plus enter. And now I already have the variables, but not the procedures for that. But I can do the same here as well. Use a code action, create procedure for that one, and if we look at that, it knew which table type it was, and so we have the customer here ready. Can do the same here for that procedure. Create procedure, create sales order, go ahead, and the sales header is also populated. And now let's try if it also works with this one. Because there I do have a return value, create procedure post sales order, enter, and also that's working. Okay, so you can imagine that it's working here as well. So that's how we can, in my eyes, I don't know a way how we can create faster our code. And furthermore, we have it always the same way. So there's all test cases would look the same. And I think that's end of my session, or end of my demo in this case, and I hope you could follow. Next part is that we can maybe in the future work even more faster with GitHub Copilot, but that I would like to hand over to you, Tobias.
Thanks, great demo. Just when you thought the extended Bacchanals form would no longer be a part of your life, it came back to haunt you. So, coding faster using GitHub Copilot, sorry. As David already mentioned, that's not working for AL yet, but fortunately our last part is about building your own extension. So now you've seen how you can create snippets, how you can use configurations, how you can use regular expressions, and so on, but maybe there is still something that is missing from Visual Studio Code, and you absolutely want to add it. You want to create your own extension that is able to do something special that is not yet there. And what that means is that we're moving away from AL and into TypeScript, for example. And the good thing about that is that GitHub Copilot works very well with TypeScript. So I want to take the opportunity to use that. But first of all, what is GitHub Copilot? Well, I'm old enough to remember, and I guess that some of you are too, the time when you had to type in everything. So there was actually no help. You needed to know what you wanted to do, and you needed to type everything. I also still remember the conference when finally IntelliSense was introduced in Seaside, well known in other areas, and we were really happy because now we got help in creating our code. And since then, actually not a lot has happened in that area. Maybe IntelliSense got a bit more clever. You can configure it as David has shown, and maybe it has better option snippets and so on, and so on. But still, you basically need to know what you're doing in a way. The next step for that is to use artificial intelligence to propose code to you. And that's actually what Copilot can do. And that's when you can really create code with rocket speed. Because now Copilot uses, as I said, artificial intelligence. It looks at other similar code areas, at other similar code, and makes a proposal for you what you might be doing in the next step. So this is something that really helps you to get an idea. As you will see in a second, you can just create comments telling it what you want to do, and then you get a code proposal. The thing I really want to stress is that this is a code proposal. It doesn't actually mean that it is right. So even with something like GitHub Copilot, you as a developer are still in the responsibility of understanding what it does and verifying that it is actually the right thing that it does, or the thing that you want it to do. It helps a lot, but you can't just keep it, use it blindly. You still need to understand what is happening. Okay, so this is GitHub Copilot to get back to creating your own Visual Studio Code extension. The things that are possible are listed here, and I actually copied that from the documentation page. You can do things like changing the look with a color or a file icon theme. You can add your own custom components, and that is something that we will do in a second. You can create a web view, so the more complex things like, for example, the explorers that we've seen in a couple of places. You can support a new programming language if you want to define something, or a debugger, and then you can also put snippets into extensions. As David has shown, snippets can be extremely powerful, and I have shown you how you can synchronize your own snippets, but maybe you want to share it in your team or share it with other colleagues, and then you can put them in an extension. You can have extension packs, which is basically just a collection of an extension, and to make the list complete, you can also extend an extension. So if you have something that works well, but you just need to add a little thing, that doesn't mean that you have to recreate it from scratch, but instead you can, just extend an extension. What I also want to mention is that this is a quite complex topic, and what I will take you through in the next couple of minutes is really only the bare minimum. We're just scratching the surface, but to give you an idea how it works, I thought it would be nice to have that demo here. So how could we work even more efficiently with your own extension? Well, at least for me, what is the most efficiency blocker is distractions. So wouldn't it be nice if you could just shut down Outlook and Teams, but still get the important notification and the reminder that there is actually a daily stand-up or whatever that is happening, but removing all the rest of it? Unfortunately, this is currently not possible, at least to the best of my knowledge, in Visual Studio Code, but maybe we could create something that could look like this. So what we're doing is we're adding a new component here, which is basically giving me the information from my calendar, from my mail, and from my Teams. And as you can see here, I have just created random dummy data. So I don't want to go into contacting Office 365 and getting all the information, but what we will do is we will create just random dummy data. Okay, so for that we want to be using a scaffolding tool, so a tool that creates the bare bones of your extension, so you don't have to set up all the files in that, which is a tool called Yeoman, and the command is yo-code, as you will see in a second. And as I already introduced, we will be using GitHub Copilot. So let's see how this looks like. Now I'm in Visual Studio Code again, and the first thing I want to do is just run yo-code. And here I can select which kind of extension I want to use. I'll use the default, just TypeScript. The name is the O365 viewer. The identifier is something very similar. The description is something that I'll skip for now. I want to initialize a Git repository. I don't want to bundle the source code. I'm going to use npm. And now it has created the code for me, and it is running npm install to fetch the required dependencies. So with that, we have everything that we need, and it asks me if I want to open Visual Studio Code to just get started with coding. I hit enter, and now we are in here. And because I've done this before, it has opened up the files, but yeah, let's take a look in a second. Okay, so this is basically just the bare bones with basically more or less an empty extension. The first thing I want to show you is how I can define that I now want to contribute something else. So we have the contributions that you can see here, and this so far is just adding a command. So now I could run this and call the command hello world, and then this would do something. But what we now want to add is something else, and for that I have prepared a snippet that I've called contributions. So what we're adding is a view container. That is basically the full block that you've previously seen with an ID and a title, and I don't have an icon, so it will be a blank icon. And inside of that container, there will be 3 views: the calendar view, the mail view, and the Teams view. So with that, we now have defined that those things are there. But of course, we want to show data. As I said, I don't wanna go into contacting Office 365, but instead we'll just create a data provider that creates dummy data. And so that we don't have to do everything, I have created the bare bones of that as well as a snippet. So you can see here, it extends the tree data provider because we want to show a tree. It has a couple of default features that you can see here. It has a function that gets the data, and this is where we will create our random data. And then we have defined an enum, and we have defined a class that shows the actual tree item. So what we want to do here is, first of all, we don't want to show always the same number. Instead, we want to have a random number. And for that, I'll just type in get random number between 1 and, let's say, 7. And now if I hit enter, this is where Copilot kicks in. So it makes a proposal in this case and offers that it will create a variable called count, because probably if it's a number, then I want to count something. And it shows me how the random functionality works in TypeScript. And I think that is actually a very good example of where Copilot is great, because creating a random function is something that is not very complex, but still it works differently in all the different coding environments that you use. So to have something like this that just gives you the easy things in the right syntax, in the right way, I think is quite powerful. So I'll just hit tab and accept that part. Now you can see here, I also have a Boolean that is called show time. So if you remember the sample, I want to have time for the calendar entries, but I don't want to have time for the other two. So we'll make an if here. And if it's show time, then we want to have a random time. Oh, that's not going to work. Let's see if this is better. Okay, so this is just a random time. And actually, yeah, now it creates the hours. It creates the minutes. Let me scroll that up a bit. And it even creates the seconds. I don't care about the seconds, so I'll replace this with 0. Oh, 0. And then let's say something like round the minutes to next 15, because probably I only have appointments every 15 minutes. Let's see. And again, this is creating the code for me. This is maybe slightly more complex, so I might need to understand what this is actually doing, but for now, let's accept it at face value. Now we want to convert it into a local string with 24-hour format, and that one also does it. You can see here it uses a default of ENUS, because probably Copilot was trained a lot on US code base, but still, yeah, that's something that I can live with, and then maybe make the change that I want to make. So we have the local time, and then we probably need to add this into our data. And there you can see it's now already recognizing that we have an array called data, and it offers me to push in a new element, O365 data, with exactly that time string. It recognizes what the different parameters are, and here it goes a bit wrong, because if I just accept it, it will tell me that there is something wrong. So let's remove that part. So this is if I have time. Now let's see if I don't have time, what happens there. And again, if I'm waiting, it offers me to do the same thing. Actually, I forgot the for loop. Okay. So you can see here that it now would offer me to create a for loop. We have basically already created everything in that for loop. So let me cut and paste that one. Okay. And then we have the same here. And here it does the same. And you can see here that it again guesses at what I'm trying to do, but still it doesn't understand that probably now I don't want to have the date string in here. So let's remove that part. And we we also need the name. So let's get a random string of 10 characters. And again, this is creating a random string of 10 characters for me. So we will use this here to show first the date and then the random string, and like this. And if we don't have a date, then we actually just use the random string. Okay, so this is it, and it returns it in the end. So now we have our function that is used to create the random data, heavily inspired by the Copilot. Now we need to call this for the different data types that we have. So let's say, sorry, now I'm lost track. Okay, yeah. So again, Copilot is helping me out. It basically says that if the type is calendar, then I will get the data with the show time. And if it's the other types, then it will return the other ones. Okay, so with that, we now have the code that gets the data. If it's a calendar, it also shows the time. If it's not a calendar, it doesn't show the time. The last thing we need to do is, now that we actually call this functionality, and for that we go into the extension TS. You can see here that this is some initialization data. I'll just keep that for now. But the thing that we also need to do is we need to call our providers, and I have created the first sample of that one. So it's the calendar provider. It's called with the calendar type. And then it creates a tree view called calendar with the calendar type. Again, we can use the helpers here to add our imports. And that should be fine. And now, of course, we need the other two options as well. And here I'm waiting again for Copilot. And this time I hit Control Enter, which gives me suggestions. And there I can see that it would offer me to create a, let's put it over here. You can see more. It would offer to create the mail provider, and it would offer to create the Teams provider. So in that case, just accept the solution, go back in here, and now my code in the extension TS is finished. Now let's go in here. Why is this red? I actually don't know. Let's see if I'm missing something. Oh yeah. I put the data provider in the root, and it should be in the source, and it automatically offers to fix this. Okay, now we should be good. Last thing now is that we need to change the activation. You can see here that this extension would only be activated if the hello world command would be called, but instead I want to show this on my view. And I called it 0365 viewer. Okay, so with that, it took me like 10 minutes to create it with heavy usage of Copilot. Now let's see what happens if I hit F5 to run this. And it's building, yay. What did I miss? Okay, the GitHub Copilot file is still open. That is something that I don't know why sometimes happens for me. If I open the proposals, then it somehow thinks that this is something that it also needs to compile, and that has failed. Now let's see if I close this and restart. and hit F5 again, where we end up. It's building, it's opening. And now we have our new view. It has calendar, mail, and Teams, but no data. That is not exactly what I was hoping for. I've added the providers. I've added the activation. That's actually a view container, not a view. So let's use the view instead. Try again. And basically what happened is that the activation event was not triggered, so it never really activated the code, and instead it showed the empty extension. But let's see what happens now. Yeah. Now we have our calendar elements, we have the mail, we have the Teams, with the random characters and so on that we expected. And I can now see that I should have put the random generator into the for loop and not outside of the for loop. But anyway, what I wanted to show you is that actually creating your own Visual Studio Code extension is not that difficult. You can use Yeoman as a scaffolder to create the basics. You can get help from things like Copilot, and then you can create your own extension in any way that you need. Okay, so that's it. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks a lot for listening to us. And now we would open up for questions. Any questions? Do you have questions?
Yeah,
here. Okay. That's good. First throw will be a short one.
Do you know how to manage memory with VS Code? Because when you're running large projects or let's say have a base app opened near you, even with code cops disabled, let's say you use the search on the base app and it caches everything and it stores that in the memory and RAM usage is high. Do you know how to probably release it without closing or reloading the VS Code?
Yeah. Do you want to answer?
Maybe I can give
Yeah.
my 2 cents
Yeah.
to that. I think I hope that there will be a little bit better if Microsoft switches to the .NET Core, that it does not take that much memory. I think there are a few properties that we can set. Don't remember them now, but there we can say that it should run in parallel, something like that. So there are a few things that we can set in the settings for the A language JSON, but otherwise I think there's not that much to do.
Yeah, and I think there's a reason why if you look at the system requirements for doing base app modifications, it says something like 32 gigabytes or even 64 gigabytes of memory. So I think to a degree we will unfortunately just have to accept that.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions? Am I seeing some? You can also get a t-shirt, of course. And no other questions, it seems like. Okay, so in that case, thanks again. David, thanks a lot for sharing the stage with me. And have a great rest of the conference.
Was it this shirt?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.